Welcome to Tackle Talk Live. We're rigging up. We're going to talk about, first and foremost, the Searcher's birthday this month. And we're proud to be the third owner. And so 50 years old, 50 years ago, the boat was launched May 24th. And so 50 years of service. And we're very proud to say that we are the owners of the Searcher, Celia and I. And a lot of history on this boat. And so we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about yellowtail fishing, and we're going to in the interim we're going to have some trivia questions for everybody to participate in with some giveaways. And the grand prize is going to be one of these shirts. 50 years, Callie designed the logo. It's got an awesome screen of the boat on it with 1970 to 2020. 50 years. 50 years. It's hard to believe. So, yellowtail fishing. There's three methods that we're going to talk about today. First method is going to be live bait fishing. So we're using 7-foot rod and 25 to 40 pound test line, and we're hoping that we have sardines for bait, and we're going to be using a 2-0 hook. I don't have a top shot on this reel right now, but just match your top shot with your braided line. So, excuse me, your top shot should be whatever line size that we recommend. So if it's 25 to 40 pound test, then if you've got 65 to 80 pound braid, then you're gonna put 25 to 40 pound as your top shot on there, and matching your fluorocarbon with your mono. So we're just fly lining baits with a 2-0 hook, nothing fancy. Pretty simple. Yellowtail fishing, J hooks, you don't need circle hooks. And so we're casting out off the side of the boat, drifting offshore with kelp patties, or if we're fishing structure with current, then you're going to be back there in the stern fishing with current. And you could Celia to pass me the sardines. I've got some sardines that are dead that we can just use for demonstration purposes to show you how to hook a live bait for yellowtail fishing. So we got sardines. So this came from Everingham bait barge just the other day. So you get a live sardine, and you notice that it's got a nice silver side. That's something that you look for when you select a bait. Dark back, silver side. When sardines lose their scales and they become weak, then you start to see red spots on their sides, and that's just something that we would throw over the side. That's not something that you want to put on your hook. So, primary way for yellowtail is sideways through the nose. Right up here there's some cartilage. Sideways through the nose. And one of the reasons for that is, especially after you've had your bait out there for 2 or 3 minutes and it's time to wind it in, to put a new one on. With it nose hooked like this, it looks pretty natural coming in, and you can get a bite on the retrieve. So that's important. Could be another way to get a bite on maybe a weaker bait. Okay, so a couple more spots. Shoulder hooking, so you can see there's the dorsal fin right here. And then you have the gill plate right here. So halfway between that. So you're just going to lightly hook that bait. So shoulder hooking. And that's for fly lining. And then the third one is belly hooking. You have a set of fins right here on the underbelly. So right behind that. So shoulder hooking and belly hooking are two soft spots in the bait, so you're going to underhand cast. And so those three places are what you're going to use for fly lining live bait. Okay, so here's a tip for you. Go to the bait tank with your rod in your hand, and so you're going to hold onto the bait, and you're going to hook onto the bait, hook the bait, let go of the bait. Because see, I got scales on my hands. If I just go to whatever side of the boat I'm fishing on and I hold onto the bait and it's wiggling in my hands, then I'm going to take life out of it. So you want to let go of it, because you got a leash on it, right, with your line. So you just hold the bait, your line 12 or 18 inches above the bait, and then go to the side of the boat that you're fishing on. Okay? So, technique. Cast this live bait out there. And one thing about yellowtail that's different than tuna is, you know, they take a little while to consume the bait. So when you get a bite, you're gonna leave the reel in free spool. Leave the reel in free spool. And you're going to count to 6 or 7. So you know that you've got a bite. It doesn't feel like a live bait. The line is going off of your reel. And so you leave it in free spool with your thumb lightly on the spool. And you count to 6 or 7. And you put the reel, and with these lever drags, you want to go to strike. You don't want to go to full, so you go to strike. This is a twin drag Accurate Products Valiant 600. Thank you, Accurate Products. So you put the reel in gear, and one of the classic mistakes that anglers make is they put the reel in gear and they swing right away. And that's a mistake that everybody makes. So you wait for the line to come tight and your rod tip to bend, and that's the time to set the hook. So you put the reel in gear. So you have all this slack that's out there. You have to wait for the line to come tight, the rod tip to bend, and that's the time to set the hook. And you have a J hook now, not a circle hook, so it's okay to set the hook. So you want to set the hook because you're going to get what you're trying to do is pull the hook out of the bait and get it hooked to the yellowtail's mouth. So by waiting until the count of 6 or 7, then that fish has consumed the bait a little bit further down in its throat, and so when you put it in gear, then you set the hook. And remember now, here's another tip, is that you have to wind back down towards the fish and take that slack out. You don't want to set the hook repeatedly like this, because you see that line going slack up there by the tip. So wind back down to the fish, set it at least a couple times. Your drag setting is already set before you cast the bait at strike, and now line is going to be taking off the reel head. So the drag system in the reel, the bend in the rod, and the line going through the water is also going to help additionally set the hook. And then you're going to follow your fish like you would normally. So that's live bait fishing for yellowtail. Remember now, if you don't get a bite and you've got a nose hook bait, you can wind in slow and maybe you get a bite on the retrieve. And with that method, when you get the bite, you go back in free spool and you count to 6 or 7, put the reel in gear, wait for the line to come tight and the rod tip to bend. set the hook once, wind back down to the fish, set the hook another time, wind back down to the fish, and then start following your fish. So that's live bait fishing for yellowtail. So before we go to the next method, it's trivia question time. And so you have an opportunity to win one of these awesome shirts. So the first person to post the answer is the winner. And Celia and Callie will collect the addresses later so that we can ship you a shirt. So, first person to post on Instagram wins. What was the searcher's original name? What was the searcher's original name? First person to post the answer to that trivia question on Instagram wins one of these awesome shirts. Okay. The second method. Yo-yo lures. Got an Accurate Products Boss Series 2-speed. You got 80-pound braid on there. You're going to put 40 to 60-pound top shot mono on there. You don't need any fluorocarbon, just mono. And tie your lure with a San Diego jam knot. And another 7-foot rod. This is the Seeker Series. It's probably a 670 or a 6470, 7-foot. It's got a little bit tipped, stiffer tip than the live bait reel. So you just cast that, drop that lure over the side and go to the bottom. And then you put the reel in gear and you're going to wind that lure up as fast as you can. And so you have, this is a 6X, it is a regular standard 6X. And then you have the 6X Junior, which is a little lighter, a little smaller. This is called the scrambled egg color. This is the blue and white. Blue and white is the universal color for yo-yo fishing for yellowtail, whether it's offshore on kelp patties or fishing around structure, whether you be anchored, drifting, if we see a school of yellowtail on the sonar, and we get everybody trying with yo-yo lures. So those are yo-yo lures. So if you're anchored and there's a little bit more current, then you need this bigger, heavier lure. So you cast that thing, you cast it, or just drop it over the side, go to the bottom, put the reel in gear. Now, yo-yo, you think about maybe yo-yoing a lure. It's not about getting to the bottom and doing this. Oops. It's not getting to the bottom and doing this. If you get to the bottom and you do this close to the bottom, then you're going to end up with a rockfish or something like that. So you don't want to do that. As soon as you get to the bottom, you put the reel in gear and you turn the handle as fast as you can. Now, one of the secrets that saves your arm is you only wind halfway up. So if we're in 120 feet of water or 150 feet of water, you're going to wind up 60 or 70 feet from the bottom, and then you're going to go back and free spool and let that lure sink to the bottom again, because that fish is a lot of times is hanging out close to the bottom by the structure. So you turn the handle as fast as you can, and the technique for that, when you get a bite, is you wind through the bite. So that's something, a phrase that everybody knows. You don't have to set the hook. Remember now, your drag is set correctly in the strike position. Whatever reel manufacturer you have strike and full. You want it set at strike so that you have the option to go a little bit tighter if you want to. If you go to full, then it's maybe your your drag is too tight and you lose your lure. So, hopefully without killing ourselves, I'm going to try and demonstrate. So, all right, so couple of things. You don't have to set the hook, and there's a couple things to consider when you're doing this. When you start off, if you're a rod belt person, once you get to the bottom and you put the reel in gear, put your rod in your rod holder and turn the handle this way. Me personally, I got my rod underneath my my armpit, and I got the hypo on the rail like this, and I'm turning the handle. So I'm turning the handle, and when I get a bite, rather than setting the hook or trying to do anything like that, I just continue to turn the handle, which is what we're talking about, winding through the bite. So you continue to turn the handle until your drag starts to go out. Hopefully you have your drag set correctly for the line class that you have. You continue to wind through the bite, and then after that, then that might be the time to set the hook. But if you have your drag set correctly, with the drag setting, the bend in the rod, the line going through the water, that's going to set your hook. So you have to wind through the bite, remember that. Keep turning the handle. If you stop and go to set the hook or whatever, see that little bit of slack in your line, then the lure falls out of the fish's mouth, and so you have a chance of losing it. So it's similar to wahoo fishing. We talked about that with our last Tackle Talk Live, was wahoo bombs and casting lures. You have to wind through the bite. You don't want to give them any slack. Make sure your drag is set correctly. And it should be a little on the tighter side, because if you're fishing around structure, if your drag is too loose, even though you wind through the bite, that fish goes back down towards the structure, and you're going to lose your lure or your fish, or both. So that's yo-yo fishing. Remember, you got to turn the handle. It's pretty important. And only wind it up halfway. So, that's yo-yo fishing. And in between methods, we got another trivia question. And the first person to answer the question on Facebook wins. What sport boat owner had the Searcher built? Who had the Searcher built back in 1970? First person on Facebook wins one of these awesome shirts. Okay, so I talked about 3 methods, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring up another method, and regrettably I don't have a nice surface iron to show everybody. It's actually my favorite way to catch fish, favorite fish to fish for yellowtail on the surface iron. And so maybe that's another topic for another Tackle Tip Thursday or something like that. But surface lures, you cast your lure out there on the surface and you wind it in slow, and you get that lure that just swims right, and you can actually watch the lure, and you can watch the fish eat the lure. And you're usually using a longer rod, an 8 or a 9 foot rod with 30 to 50 pound test. And so casting a surface lure, whether it's a Taddy 45 or a Salis 7X, multiple surface irons out there. And so that's for another Tackle Tip Thursday. We can cover that. Okay, so if we're fishing around structure, here's your 4th method. Dropper loop fishing. We got an 80-pound outfit here and a heavy rod. This is an OSP 3-in-1 seeker. We got a Penn 60 with a 100-pound braid and 80-pound test line. We got a 16-ounce torpedo sinker on the bottom. And then we got a 5.0 owner Gorilla live bait hook here. And you can see that the length of the dropper loop itself right here is 12 to 18 inches long. If it's 24 inches long when you build it, then you can tie a double San Diego jam knot on it. But you want it at a minimum of 12 inches long, and it should be within 3 or 4 feet of your sinker. And then another tip for everybody, you know, how many times did you get to the bottom and you put the reel in gear and you're stuck on the bottom? Well, you just tie an overhand knot 12 inches above your sinker. You're going to get loose. You're going to lose your sinker, which is a bummer, but an overhand knot above your sinker will at least get you off the bottom and get you fishing again. If they're biting, you don't want to lose precious time. So, all right. So, pretty much the best way to hook your live bait is sideways through the nose. And when you're fishing with a sinker, whether maybe you got a 2-ounce slider if you're fishing with a live bait on the surface and you got a 2-ounce slider, you probably want to hook your bait sideways through the nose. So, sideways through the nose. Cartilage, great spot to hook your bait. Then you're going to go to the bottom. You want your drag set a little extra heavy for fishing the bottom like this. You have an 80-pound test, so you might as well have it snug because you're fishing close to the bottom. There's a chance to lose your fish in that structure, so you want a snug drag. So sideways through the nose, circle, no circle hook, just a standard J hook. And I know that some guys use circle hook. That way they just let the drag do the setting and of the hook, and you don't have to swing on it or anything like that. So that's I guess that's debatable. I'm okay with just the standard J hook. So the technique is again, hoping that we don't hurt ourselves here. That clicker noise. Okay, so you go to the bottom. As soon as your sinker hits the bottom, you put the reel in gear and you're going to wind up 3 or 4 cranks so that your bait and your sinker is above, your sinker's not laying on the bottom where you can lose it, right? And so for those of you that have rod belts and are accustomed to using rod belts, maybe that's the time to put the rod in your rod belt, because you don't want to transfer after you set the hook and you know you're trying to find your rod belt. So if you put your reel in your rod belt to start off with, then that's one step you don't have to worry about. So you're just up off the bottom, and I guarantee you'll know when you get a bite. It's a pretty strong thump. And remember now, a yellowtail, it takes them a few seconds to consume the bait, so you just kind of have to be patient, and you wait for your rod to load up or the rod tip to bend, And that's the time to set the hook. And once again, when you set the hook for yellowtail, grouper, whatever, dropper loop on the bottom, you set the hook, and remember now, you gotta wind back down to the fish. That's one time. Second time, wind back down to the fish. And then maybe even a third time, and you wind back down to the fish. You don't want slack in the line, so if you don't wind back down to the fish, if you can see that line on the tip, it goes slack, and you're not going to get the hook out of the bait and into the fish's mouth. So you have to wind back down to the fish, and with a snug drag, that fish is going to start taking line off of your reel, and then you're going to follow your fish. Now remember, with a snug drag, the first 30 feet are key. So when the fish stops, you have to really pull hard and turn the handle. And of course, with these 2-speed reels nowadays, probably in low gear, you're going to gain that first 30 or 40 feet up off the bottom, so that if that fish takes a run, then you know he's got a little ways to swim before he gets back down to the bottom. So that first 30 to 50 feet is key. So you gotta turn the handle in low gear with a tight drag. So you're fishing in gear, not in free spool, in gear on the bottom. Wait for the line, for the rod tip to bend and the line to go tight, and that's the time to set the hook. And remember that you have to wind back down to the fish after you swing. Dropper loop fishing for yellowtail. And 80-pound test. So the biggest outfit you got. 2-speed reel helps. Yellowtail, they're fun to catch, and they taste really good too. So those are the 4 methods for yellowtail fishing. We have bait and artificial, and I think it's time for another trivia question. So the first person to post on Instagram wins. Who owned the Searcher before Art and Celia? Who owned the Searcher before Art and Celia? So the first person to post on Instagram wins another awesome shirt.
Question on yo-yo fishing?
Question on yo-yo fishing. Shoot.
High speed gear ratio on the reel or slower gear ratio? What's your preference?
High speed, because you want that lure traveling fast through the water. So you're in high speed until you get the hook set. Then after you got the hook set and you're following your fish, then you can go to low gear. But when you don't have a bite, then you want to be in high gear, so that your gear ratio is such that your retrieval is very rapid. And that's what again, you're turning the handle as fast as you can. So you have to turn the handle as fast as you can in high gear. And after you get the fish hooked and settled in, then you can go to low gear. How about another trivia question? First person to post on Instagram or Facebook wins. How long is the Searcher? How long is the Searcher? First person to post on Instagram or Facebook wins a 50th anniversary shirt.
How about a question, usual target species in mid-July?
You know, July is one of those months that we start to look for kelps, kelp patties offshore, and there can be a chance for yellowtail with all 2 of the 4 methods: live bait fishing and yo-yo fishing. And you know, there's a tremendous amount of bluefin tuna out there right now, just not very far offshore. So in July, mid-July, we're going to be probably targeting bluefin tuna, and if we're looking for something different to do, then we might go offshore a little further and see if we can't find a water edge with some kelp patties on it, and maybe there'll be some yellowtail.
Sorry. Would you still be in gear if you were using a circle hook instead of a J hook? Sorry, that was for the last one.
For dropper loop fishing, yes, absolutely. You want to be in gear because you're on the bottom. So if you're in free spool, then you know you're letting that fish wrap your line around a rock or whatever. No, you're in gear with a circle hook or a J hook on the bottom, fishing with heavy tackle, dropper loop fishing.
When dropper loop fishing, do you start out with the reel in low right after you set the hook, or wait until the fight is underway?
Wait until the fight's underway. That way you can gain line fast in the beginning. That's what I would do. You know, you're probably going to go into low not too soon after the fact, after you hook the fish, and maybe it takes its first run. Then you're going to go into low. So it could be either or. It's just, you know, gaining that first 30 feet is pretty important, and so either or. But you know, I'm inclined to be in high gear.
What's the best lure for fishing patties, and what line would you use?
Well, if I'm fishing a patty, it doesn't always happen, but there are times when, you know, a kelp patty is like its own ecosystem. You have small bait fish that are underneath the kelp patty, and that attracts the bigger fish, and then that attracts bigger fish. So if I'm fishing on a kelp patty, I'm going to be using a blue and white, depending upon how windy it is. If it's calm, I can get away with a 6X Junior. If it's a little bit windy, then and the boat's drifting a little faster, then I'm using a little heavier lure, and I'm going down to, you know, 150 feet, 170 feet, and I'm doing the same method with yo-yo lures. And there are times, not all the time, but there are times that, you know, a little larger fish is deeper than the smaller fish that are up on the surface. And sometimes you get on a kelp patty and there's a bunch of little tiny ones that we release, and we promote letting those go, and you know, the person that's a little bit deeper maybe gets a better great fish. So sometimes on a kelp patty, you know, you have this flurry at the beginning with a bunch of little tiny yellowtail. You let all those go, and the further you drift off, then you know, maybe the little ones go away and the bigger ones kind of take over. And then for yo-yo lure fishing offshore, probably 40, 50 pound test line. No fluorocarbon, you just tie the yo-yo lure straight to the end of your line with a San Diego jam knot.
I have one more. What weight tatty lure for yo-yo fishing and top water? 5X or 7X?
So, 5X, it could be either, and they come in heavy or they come in light. So when you go to your tackle store, you know, tell them that you want some yo-yo lures for fishing deep, fishing, you know, in 150 feet of water, and so you're going to get a heavy Salis 6X. Or if you're looking for a surface iron, then they make 6X and 7X lights. So surface irons are light because it's a slow retrieve, and they swim, whereas, you know, a heavy one sinks. So you want a couple of both in your tackle box for fishing for kelps, fishing yellowtail on kelps. How about another trivia? What is the boat's, the builder, the marine architect, what boat building company did the owner get or contract to build the searcher? So the first person on Facebook to answer that question correctly, who was the boat builder slash marine architect of the searcher? First person on Facebook wins an awesome 50th anniversary shirt.
If bluefin are over 150 pounds, how heavy should your gear be?
Well, you know, if they're biting 40, 50, or 60 pound, then I'm trying the heaviest tackle that I have. You know, I mean, if you go down to 30-pound test and they're 150 pounders, then yeah, you're going to get a bite, but you're probably not going to land them. And it's going to take a really long time. So if the captain comes on the PA and says, wow, these look like heavy fish, 100 to 200 pounds, then I'm fishing 60 or 80-pound test, and I'm making sure that I have the liveliest bait possible. That way, if I get a bite, I have the right gear. That's the key. Don't just go to get a bite. You know, you have to work at it a little bit harder. But I'm changing my bait on a regular basis, and I'm using the heaviest tackle possible so that I have a chance to land one of those fish of a lifetime. How about another trivia question? What was the name of the manufacturer of the original engines? What engine manufacturer name for the original engines in the searcher? First person to post on Facebook wins a shirt. What manufacturer name of the original engines on the boat? We actually name our garage, our storage garage, Mount blank. We used to store a bunch of parts up there. Spare engines, spare parts. Yeah.
Do yellowtail bite on poppers?
I'm sure they do. I don't think it's a, you know, it's not a method that we use, but you know, if there's a very large school of yellowtail that are up boiling on bait, then you have a chance for sure. That's the thing about poppers, is that they got to be up close to the surface and boiling around and showing in order to have a chance to get a bite. So I think just about any fish that's up on the surface have a chance to catch one on a popper. It's just not, it's not the traditional method for yellowtail. Surface lure would be the right way to go, or fly line on a live sardine. Okay. What specific material is the hull of the searcher constructed of? What material did they use for the hull of the searcher? First person on Instagram wins a shirt. Remember now, you post the answer, and if you answer the question correctly, then we'll collect the addresses later so that we can ship you a shirt. We'll get all your personal info, mailing address, and what size shirt you want. Okay, so what else can I tell you about yellowtail fishing? I guess I would be know, I just want to thank our sponsors, Seeker Rods and Accurate Products, Penn reels and rods. We wouldn't, Iser Line, Owner Hooks. We couldn't do all this without some great sponsors, and you know, we're still taking reservations, and we're hoping that next month we're going to get out there and get a shot at some of those bluefin that are out there.
Oh, what's the largest yellowtail that's ever been caught on your boat?
There is a junior world record caught a long time ago at Guadalupe Island by Adam Einstos. Mike Einstos is his dad. He's a longshoreman in Long Beach and a very long time customer of the Searcher, comes out every year and is just a great guy. So Mike's son Adam landed a 58-pound yellowtail at Guadalupe Island at the south end, and I gotta believe he was fishing with a live green mackerel on the bottom with a dropper loop and 80-pound test. I'm sure that he was fishing right next to his dad, and that didn't make his dad very happy because he got a bite and his dad didn't. So yeah, Adam Einstos has a junior world record that still holds. Nobody's broken it. So it's in the 80s. I'm sure it's in the 80s. So yeah, great to have Mike on the boat, and we hope in the near future we'll get Adam back out. So Tackle Talk Live, and we're hoping that everybody's happy and healthy and staying home, and hope that everybody in the Searcher family, all your family members are healthy. We're all doing great. Team Searcher, we're working on the boat now. We put the bait tank back on. Captain Mike put some salt water in it today. Captain Ryan, new Captain Ryan and Justin are working down in the bunk room, and we'll just make that a surprise for everybody. Just a little upgrade down there cosmetically that I think everybody will like. And we're just doing some regular maintenance on the boat, and we're looking forward to getting the green light from the county so that we can all go back to work and go fishing. Can't wait. Don't forget, happy birthday to the Searcher. 50 years of service. And call Celia or Callie at the office at 619-226-2403 or book online at searchersportfishing.com. Thank you, everybody.